What's up, everyone? This is Mike Casu, and you're listening to the Brute Strength Podcast. This week, I interview founder and president of Precision Nutrition, John Berardi. This is, without a doubt, one of the best podcasts we have put out. John is one of the most fascinating people I've had the opportunity to interview. There's so many gems in this thing in relation to nutrition, coaching, leadership, business ownership, as well as just being a better, more wholehearted human being. Before we get started, if you're a regular listener of this show and you haven't done so already, please put this show on pause. Go to iTunes and leave me your quick review. I would really appreciate it. I'm going to invite any of you that are interested to call into a voicemail that I have set up and leave some questions. So then I'm going to play back your question on the podcast, and I'm either going to answer the question myself or I'm going to get one of my guests to help me answer those questions. If you're interested, the number is 801-449-0503. That's 801-449-0503. Enjoy the show.
Mike, what's up, brother? This is Zach Evanesh from the Underground Strength Gym in the Dirty Jersey. My question is business related, especially now that you are married to Adi. You guys are both doing some awesome stuff, inspiring stuff with the podcast and the online. I'd love to hear how you guys came up with creating a mutually awesome relationship with people who are helping you run your business. So perhaps that is a web designer, somebody perhaps helping you with the marketing and the web design. And I'm wondering, do you bring them in as a percentage of the profit, or is it some sort of a salary or specific pay scale? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to grow your business, basically, with a team so you can work on your own unique ability, and how to make it something that's not short-term, that self-destructs, something that's long-term awesome. All right, brother, keep crushing it with the Brute Strength Podcast. I'm going to leave a review. I haven't done that in a long time, but I love what you're doing, and it was a great honor to be on your show. Thank you, brother.
Zach, what's up, brother? Thank you for calling in, man. I'm going to get a mutual friend of ours, John Berardi, to help answer this question. John is employing over 100 full-time, full benefits employees with Precision Nutrition, so not many people better than him to help out with this answer.
Yeah, thanks. And it's great to hear from Zach. We've known each other for a super long time and had a lot of internet communications and stuff like that over the years. So it's great to hear from him. You know, this is a challenge that I've thought a lot about over the years, obviously, as we've grown and tried to navigate, you know, how do you answer this question? Does someone become a staff member? Who do you share revenue with? Does someone stay a contractor? And the truth is, I don't have any tidy answers for it. You know, I mean, we've tried things in the early days. You know, basically, it was all contractors, right? So we had no money at the time, and we didn't quite know what our business even was yet. You know, we were just trying to build a couple of cool products for people, and that was early on. And back then, you know, Phil, who's my co-founder, and I didn't have any money to pay ourselves. And so, you know, for specific products, we would do a rev share for people, right? So it'd be like, hey, there's a designer, he could help us create a killer book. We'll give him a percentage of that, you know, or one of our cookbooks, Gourmet Nutrition, for example. You know, we did that with a chef, and we gave him a percentage of the book. And that was the early days when there wasn't any revenue yet. And it's a relevant question. You're like, okay, cool. No one's making any money yet. How do you pay someone in advance? Mm-hmm. Right? So that was in the early days. So it was all contractors. Then we swung the pendulum maybe a little bit too far a couple years later when we started actually making good money at PN and having a regular revenue stream. And then we wanted everyone on staff. So we hired all kinds of arcane roles. I mean, and there's even a few holdovers of that. Like right now, for example, we have a chef on staff, right? And she's great and it's interesting. And we hired her because we wanted to do more recipes and more cookbooks and stuff like that. And, in my mind, it's like, but why? Do we need her on staff? Does she need to be on payroll? Do we need to be giving her like employment benefits to do that? Or could she just be, chefing as a contractor? And, there's no tidy answer to that, but we love her. She does great work. We've parlayed it into some seriously cool stuff where she actually will go with specific, very elite athletes that we work with during tournaments and big key events and cook food for them, So, for example, someone might be at a tennis Grand Slam event and she'll be there prepping food, or someone might be at a UFC fight and she'll be there helping them cut weight. So we found some cool ways to use it, but I think we went a little bit too far at one point where we're like, everyone has to be on staff. And now we're finding a better balance where we're like, hey, contractors are for helping us do things that basically isn't within our unique ability set as a company.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Love that.
Not as an individual, right? But as a company. So I think the first thing to define is what is our company's unique ability or capabilities, or however you want to say it. And then those are the things you have in-house. And there should only be a couple of them, and then everything else can be contracted out to organizations or consultancies where their unique ability or their core competency is that thing. So, I've talked about a lot there, and, if I were to map this out, because I think in a very process oriented way, it's kind of like the first question, where are you in your company's development, right? When you're young and you're small, you have to do whatever, however gets the thing done that helps you grow. And then as you get to a later phase, and you're starting to figure out what your unique abilities and core competencies as an organization are, you really have to think hard about those, nail them down, then maybe hire in for those, and then hire out for other things. And that seems to be what's working for us right now.
I love that answer, man. And I'll just to add another little, piece to this, Zach. I think money is only one small piece of what someone wants to be a part of an organization and to be a part of, your vision. What you can also offer these people is, one, you're an entrepreneur, and I know that because I see your energy, I see your vision to make change and to affect people's lives, and you just have that entrepreneurial spirit. Not everyone wants to do what you do, and not everyone can do what you do. So what you can provide for them is that vision and that strength and courage to keep moving forward, while also giving them clear expectations and allowing them to operate in their unique ability and supporting them by giving them an opportunity to master their craft, giving them the autonomy to do it their way, right? You give them some expectations, but then you back off and you let them champion their own part of your company. Those are a couple just invaluable things that you can offer people that, if the money is almost there or just at a base level, those things can make it really worth someone's while long term.
It's such a great point, Mike. I really appreciate you bringing that up. And that triggered for me a couple of lessons that we learned along the way too. There's some people who are financially motivated, and you think of them as guns for hire. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that. They might not be the people that you want on staff, though.
Right.
And what I found is that the people that end up doing stuff on staff within your core competency generally want the things you just described. They want to do meaningful work, and a team of other people who want to do meaningful work. They want to be given the ability, the free reign to be autonomous and creative. And like you said, money isn't the primary motivator. We at PN, we work remotely, right? And I know you do too, Mike. And so we can often hire people at salaries which are far less than what they get paid elsewhere, mm-hmm. simply because they can work from home and be the master of their time and when they work and how they work. We hired one executive a couple of years back And he was cool taking a threefold pay cut.
Wow.
Because in his life, he was making tons of money, but not spending time with the people that he cared about. He was sitting in his car commuting like crazy, so he was like, he was way overqualified for the role. You know what I mean? He was a great hire, and he's still with us today, and our company's grown to match his skills, eventually. But he took way less money to get a different compensation package.
Right.
You know what I mean? And his compensation was time and energy and time with his family and all this kind of stuff.
Because you can always make more money. That stuff you can never get back.
That's right.
I love it.
So it's an interesting thing that I think some of us who are super ambitious and then others who are really money motivated forget that everyone isn't like them. You know what I mean?
Right.
That maybe other people aren't as ambitious, and that's okay. Maybe other people want a different currency, and that's okay.
I love it, man. Thank you. Hope that helps, Zach. What's up, everyone? This is Mike Cazayoux. This is the Brute Strength Podcast. I am here with a celebrity in the fitness industry, John Berardi, PhD, owner of Precision Nutrition. John, thank you so much for making some time to do this with me, man.
No worries. Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate the podcast. I appreciate you having me on, and everyone listening. I appreciate you guys listening today. I know, we don't all have unlimited time to just listen to stuff. So I'm hoping that we can provide a lot of value for you today, give you some new ideas to help you take your own fitness, or whether it's your fitness business, to another level. And I'm just excited to do that. It's what I love to do.
Hell yeah, man. So like I was saying, I would love to start out. I know many people that are listening to this already know all about you guys, and they've either taken your coaching certifications or been coached by you, but there are a lot of others that probably haven't haven't really dove into what you guys are all about. So what kind of diet do you prescribe, and what's kind of your general philosophy on nutrition?
Yeah. Okay, cool. And it's okay if people haven't heard of us and don't know what we do. That's totally fine. I don't expect that. So let me start real briefly, and I'll tell people what Precision Nutrition does, and then we'll talk about diet. Basically, we do three things. One is we coach clients, lots and lots of clients. Take your 3 favorite experts. You know what? Scratch that. Take your 10 favorite experts. Put all the clients they've coached together, and we've coached more. A lot more. We have an online coaching program that we've been running for a lot of years. And through that, we've directly coached, through our own full-time coaching staff, 50,000 people. So that's part of our business. It's the direct coaching of people who are interested in looking, feeling better, whether it's losing weight. We've had clients 600 pounds.
Wow.
Whether it's competing in athletic competitions, whether it's people who want to get ripped, it runs the whole gamut. You can imagine 50,000 people is a lot, and that's a lot of goal sets, and that's a lot of types of diets that they want to follow, whether some of them want to follow a vegan diet and some paleo and whatever. The other thing we do is we certify professionals. So people who work in fitness or want to work in health space, and they want to have seen what we've done with our coaching, and they've asked us to teach them how. And so years ago, we developed a certification for that. It's the #1 certification in the nutrition space. 35,000 people have signed up for that and gone through as a student. And then the last thing is, the most recent thing, is something we call Pro Coach. So we've, for a long time, wanted to connect the two, right? We have this great coaching program, and supporting that coaching program is this whole set of online tools, right? Because we coach online. Those 50,000 people who've lost over 1 million pounds of body fat, many of them we've never met. We've coached them online exclusively. So you need tools for that, client management tools, a curriculum. So the #1 thing we got asked for by the professionals we certify is, can I use your program? Like, it's killer. It's awesome. How do you, I want to use it. So we finally in 2016 created a way for the professionals who go through our certification to deliver our coaching curriculum using our tools to their clients with them as the coach. Wow. Now that's where things got really crazy and awesome, because since then, which was June when we released it, those pro coaches we're working with, so our certified pros delivering our coaching, have coached another 100,000 people.
Wow.
So to date, we're talking about data from 150,000 clients over the last 10 years. So I say this to set the stage so people know what we're up to. And then when I talk about diet, whether you agree or not is okay, but I want people to understand that we've worked with a lot of people. So this isn't just like opinion.
Yep.
And this isn't just like what I read in some research studies. This is what we've done to produce results in a lot of people. And we've just published 3 research studies looking at the effectiveness of this program in peer-reviewed journals. I'm super excited to announce it because literally all 3 studies just came out in the beginning of January.
That is awesome.
2 were done at the University of Pennsylvania. 1 was done with a physicians group out in Victoria, British Columbia in Canada. So again, now we're talking about a program that's coached a lot of people to a lot of success, and it's evidence-based. So that's a long-winded beginning preface,
That is
to
perfect. I love
your
it.
question. So let's talk about what kind of diet do we recommend? Well, we recommend that you follow the diet that resonates most with you, and we're going to help you follow that better. So what I mean by that is people love to orient themselves in camps. It's probably primal. It's probably like wired into our DNA, the psychology of aligning with groups that we feel safe in, groups that we like to identify with, groups that we like to share common beliefs with. So if I become a vegan, I like to hang out with vegans, and we find ways to make fun of meat eaters, and if I'm a meat eater or a paleo person, whatever, I find ways to make fun of vegans. And I find the science that supports my perspective, and I find what's wrong with veganism. And then I look at like the canine teeth of, evolutionary man, and I argue whether my eating system is superior. And whether any of that's true or false, there's one thing I know for sure. It's not helpful. As a coach, it doesn't help. It doesn't help to buy into any of these theories, whether they're right or wrong, because ultimately there's people who are going to want to eat a high carb diet and people are going to want to eat a low carb. There's going to be people who want to eat only things that come from plants and people who want to eat a little bit of plants and only things that ran, flew, or swam. And as a coach, I need to know how to help all those people. I mean, that's meaningful to me. Maybe if you don't want to be a coach with a broad base of people, then you can pick a camp. But for me, I want to find the commonality that helps vegans get in shape, because you can't deny there are some vegans out there in great shape. Likewise, there's some high carb people, likewise low carb people, and likewise paleo people. So if I squint my eyes and say, independent of the things that we think are different, are there commonalities among the really healthy, fit vegans, really healthy, fit paleos, really healthy, fit intermittent fasters, or whatever the flavor of the month is diet-wise? I can actually find them. So some of them are things like, number 1, paying attention to how you're eating. The research is super clear. When someone starts paying closer attention to how they eat, they start eating better, independent of trying to follow a new diet.
It's why I want about the physical act of eating.
Yeah, yes, and I'll even give you some of the practices that we help people use to develop this skill, because it is a skill. The first one we call eat slowly. I mean, it seems so straightforward, right? But this is one of the most research-proven diet tips. When you ask people to eat slowly, what ends up happening is not only do they eat slowly, they, through eating slowly, learn to pay better attention to their appetite signals. They learn to think more about food. They even taste food in different ways, if you can believe it. If you just like crush a box of M&Ms, for example, you don't really taste them. But if you were to eat M&M slowly, your experience is totally different with how an M&M tastes. It actually doesn't taste very good when you actually chew it like 10 times per M&M. You're like, oh man, it tastes kind of like chemicals. Yuck. So the act of eating slowly tunes you in to your own hunger and appetite cues and flavor, taste, satisfaction. It makes you think more clearly about how you're eating. And that simple practice ends up leading to positive nutritional changes for people, independent of me asking them to change their diet at all. I don't have to write down, eat more protein, eat less sugar. They just do it when you ask them to slow down. Right. Another practice that we have people do is we practice.
Can I stop you real quick, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to highlight this because it sounds like you're suggesting that people be more mindful. Is that accurate?
It is, yeah. I mean, this is a mindfulness exercise, and I don't call it that because that has a whole set of cultural baggage around it. You're like, next he's going to ask me to meditate and whatever. Right. And if you think meditation is cool, that's great. But there's some people who are afraid of that, right. And it doesn't fit into their schema. You know,
the only reason I highlight it is because it's kind of a theme on here. I've interviewed some really, really amazing people, and being more present in general is really a common thread in all of these amazing people. So
it's a great point
out there, guys.
That's exactly it. That's what I call it. I call it pay attention to your life.
Yep.
That's it. You can call it mindfulness and presence and live in the moment, whatever. Mm-hmm. Just pay attention to your life. And here's the thing though. I could write a little witty phrase and post it over an inspirational photo and put it up on Instagram or Facebook and be like, pay attention to your life, whatever, right? The thing is, paying attention to your life is a skill.
Right.
And people don't learn it by being admonished. You know what I mean?
Yep.
By just shouting at people, eat less, pay attention to your life. Yes. That doesn't actually help you build the skill of paying attention to your life. What we've tried to do at PN is figure out the practices, the habits that people can do over the course of, daily routine that build the skills required to eat well, that build the skills required to exercise. Now, I know a lot of people train who listen to this podcast, and I know a lot of them train hard. And I liken it to progression in the gym. And a lot of people haven't thought about nutrition this way. It's all we think about. So imagine someone walks into the gym on the very first day, and as a coach, you're like, hey, I want you to learn how to do a complicated lift, like a clean and jerk or something. And you actually load it up with the weight you're capable of, and you do clean and jerk for them. And then you're like, okay, now copy me. Right? That's a disaster waiting to happen. What a good coach does is they break it down. What they probably first do is they do a movement assessment. See if you can even move in the right way to do that. Mm-hmm. And you probably can. So what they'll then do is a bunch of corrective exercises that are going to help you with ankle flexibility or hip mobility or whatever, right? And then you're going to have someone do chunks of the exercise, not the whole thing put together, but small pieces of it until you can master those. And then once you do that, you're going to try the whole clean and jerk with a broomstick or something. And then eventually you're going to do loaded. And then eventually you're going to do a serious load. That's progression. That's what we all know how to do in the gym. And it all makes sense as a client in the gym. But when it comes to nutrition, we do the exact opposite. We actually write people a menu, and clients ask for the menu. And then we're like, yeah, go do that. Well, that's the same as saying just copy my complicated movement, right? Because following a diet requires a set of skills that someone new to it may not have. So for us, we're like, how do we use a progression model, the same that you might for exercise, with nutrition? And so the way we do it is practices. We have people practice so they can build skills, and those skills help them reach their goals. So, we're talking about this one skill that all successful dieters and diets have in common, and that's paying attention, right? So how do I can't admonish you into paying attention. What I have to do is give you something to practice every day. Mm-hmm. And so for 2 weeks, I may have you practice slowing down your eating. So I'm like, how long does it take you to eat? And you know what? Time it. You're like, wow, okay, I'm polishing off my meals in like 6 minutes. All right, great. Can we make it 10? For the next 2 weeks, let's just try 10 minutes. and see what that extra 4 minutes gets you. And what it gets you
now,
is
the CrossFitters out there don't understand what you're talking about, because it's the fastest time that wins, John.
That's right. That's right. I know this is going to be difficult for this crowd. But and we'll just go inverse, right? So what's the inverse of what you do in the gym?
Right.
Do that with your
okay.
with
So the
kitchen.
opposite. Got it.
Yes, that's it. So, the next thing we practice then, okay, you've got eat slow. All right. You're going to think it's annoying. And the worst part is it's hard. It's going to be hard for you to do. And then the next thing we may have you practice is eating in a distraction-free way. Don't read your computer. Don't look at your phone. No iPad, no TV. And you don't have to do it. This isn't like what the best people do forever. This is just a practice that you do for 2 weeks, so you build a particular skill. So I'm not asking you to eat slow always, and eating fast is bad. That's not true. That's not what I'm saying here. It's that I'd like you to just try it for a week or two and see what comes up. Then the next thing is distraction-free eating. Then we start thinking about eating to 80% full, where we actually have you think about what it feels like to be 100% full. Okay, what's it feel like to be stuffed? All right, now what we want to do is back off from that and stop at satisfied, not stuffed, which we call 80% full. And this little suite of habits right here, a week or two each, helps you build the skill of paying attention. So instead of just waving my finger and wagging it at you and being like, pay attention, guys, I'm going to give you some things to practice that will help you build the skill of paying attention. So, this is all. Now, when we talk about the commonalities among diets, this is how we go at it. We're like, what's common? How do we help people build the skill required to do it? So that first one is pay attention to what you're eating. That is common among all successful diet plans, whether it's paleo or vegan or whatever. People who try and do a good job of it pay attention to what they're eating. And when they start paying attention, they do the second thing, which is they eat more, let's call them whole foods, or they eat foods that are less processed. Because when you start paying attention to this stuff, you're like, yeah, I'm eating a lot more junk than I thought.
Right.
And I'm scarfing it down and I'm not even tasting it, So paleo people, they eat meat and unprocessed or minimally processed plant foods. They eat tubers. They eat stuff like that. Good vegans who are doing a good job of it, they eat the same kind of thing. It's minimally processed. So again, we're building a criteria. You pay attention to what you eat. Then paying attention helps you get to more minimally processed foods, and you start to build up a taste for those kinds of foods, and you actually start to have aversions to these chemically tasting foods. And the only way to build this up is the skills we talked about. And then the next thing is, by eating these minimally processed foods, we end up with less nutritional deficiencies. See, I believe there's a lot of people walking around with subclinical nutritional deficiencies. Mm-hmm. Now, they may not manifest like they did a couple hundred years ago when pirates are like getting scurvy and stuff, but they do manifest in behavioral and attention changes. There have been a host of interesting studies done in UK, Canada, US, where they gave something like a fish oil capsule and a multivitamin to prison inmates first. And what they found was this dramatic reduction in violent and antisocial behaviors. Then they gave it to kids in schools. And what they found was the same thing: less antisocial behavior, higher cognitive test scores, attention scores, and things like that. Now, I don't think there's anything magical about fish oil and multivitamins, but what I do think is that what we're seeing here is the correction of subclinical deficiencies. You can do it with food. You can do it with a supplement. The thing that prison inmates and school kids have in common is a lot of their food comes institutionally, right? So they're fed cheap, low quality food. So again, our criteria, paying attention to what you eat. That's what the best dieters do. Then they eat minimally processed foods. Then, through the process of that, they're paying attention to and accomplishing less subclinical deficiencies. And then the last thing they share in common, the best ones encourage movement, whether that's like hardcore strength exercise in the gym or whether it's just walking. The best plans incorporate that. So now we have a lens for saying like what is in common between these things.
Mm-hmm.
And we find the commonalities. And now we can say, if you do these things, exercise, eliminate subclinical deficiencies, eat mostly unprocessed natural foods, and you pay attention to what you're eating and eat slowly, doesn't matter what diet you follow. I can help you get in great shape following any diet if you pay attention to these 4 things.
I absolutely love it, man. That it's like hearing you say some of that is like hearing like, you know, some kind of philosophy that really resonates with you. It just sounds like truth to me. I absolutely love that sentiment. I think it was Eric Helms who said this. He talks about including good foods rather than excluding bad foods. And I take that to mean kind of like once we meet our micronutrient goal for the day, that we don't necessarily get bonus points. And so my question to you is that kind of a correct line of thinking? And what are your thoughts on that idea overall?
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that idea. And we call it inclusion versus exclusion, right? Instead of being like, oh, there's these bad foods that I can't eat. This is simply not true. Unless it's your goal to create an artificial construct of what the perfect diet looks like, no sugar, no saturated fat, whatever your construct is. I don't agree with any of it. But you can, if it's your goal to create the perfect diet construct, and then you'll love yourself more if you hit it at 100%, then you can operate in this good food, bad food way. I don't think that's anyone's goal. Right. I think your goal is a more functional goal, listener. And it's, I want to just feel good, look good, perform well,
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely, man. So
and
do
if
you
that's
think
the goal, then I think this idea of, hitting your minimums, your healthy food minimums, and then having whatever you want on top of that can work in a lot of situations. I'll give you an example. I work with George St. Pierre, and I have for a long time. For those of you who don't know who that is, he's UFC welterweight champion, arguably one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. And when I first started working with George, like he had this anxiety because he thought like he wanted my help, but he thought I was going to ask him to stop eating the things that he likes eating. And George really likes McDonald's. He really likes Subway, right? They're 2 places that he would eat at routinely because when he was younger and he wasn't the GSP that he was just a up and coming fighter. He worked as a garbage man. The guy made no money and had to pay for coaching, right? So he was super busy. He's training 2-3 times a day. Plus he had his job. So fast food was the only option for him. It's what he could afford, and it's what he could eat while running between jobs and gyms, right? So he was worried I was going to take it away. And I was like, George, man, for someone like you who's naturally lean, who trains like crazy, what I want you to do is just follow these basic meals. So if you eat the 3-4 things I ask you to eat over the course of a day, you can have McDonald's and Subway every day if you want, as long as it's on top of that.
Right.
Now, this won't work for everyone. People who've seen George St. Pierre know he's absolutely ripped. He trains, 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. So that's not going to be for everyone. But I think the sentiment is right. It can just be dialed down based on your activity level and the results you get from it.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely love that, man. Another kind of hot topic in a hot topic in the functional fitness space seems to be, and just correct me if I'm completely wrong in my assumptions here, but it seems to me like there's more and more research pointing to a high fat diet being linked to better longevity, health and longevity, while on the flip side, it's been long thought that a high carb diet is best for most athletes. If there are athletes that want to perform optimally, they want to look great all year long, but they also want to live, 100 high quality years. How do they marry those 2 schools of thought? And just what are your general thoughts on that?
This is great. Great question, man. I think we kind of have to clear the decks real quick, before we dive into it, because there's a lot of belief and assumption that goes into some of these things, right? I mean, if I start talking about the current sentiment towards high fat being too positive, people are immediately going to be like, oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. You have to remember, I have a PhD, and your research heroes are my friends. You know what I mean? Like, right. I know these guys, right? So guys like Jeff Volek, who do a lot of this low carb, high fat research, I know, I respect their work. So let's start with high fat. I think it's too popular nowadays, and I understand why. For years, there was the low fat sentiment and the high carb sentiment, and that didn't work out. And the way philosophical beliefs change is by going from one extreme on the pendulum, swinging to the other, and then normalizing. Well, we're just in the opposite swing. Right. Some people believe that for a belief system to land in the middle where it actually belongs, it always goes far too far to one side, and then people have to forcefully push it, and it goes to the other side. You can imagine a pendulum here. And then eventually it normalizes in the middle. It's not a perpetual motion machine, right? So it loses momentum and it starts to kind of come to the middle ground. That's what's happening right now, except for we haven't hit the middle phase yet. So everyone who was like, yeah, that high carb, low fat stuff was BS. We need fat to be healthy, have just swung the pendulum too far. And it's not the researchers, it's the people just posting popularly on the internet, and then people misinterpreting what they're saying. If fat is important, more fat is not better. I mean, most of the research still suggests that a high fat diet isn't best for longevity. Now, there's caveats around that too, right? So a high fat diet with high carb obviously isn't best for longevity. We just wrote a big piece on our website on the ketogenic diet. And I feel like it's one of the most balanced treatments of it. Now, people who love the ketogenic diet are like, you guys are so biased, it's ridiculous. Why? Because we said it's great for some people, not great for others. That seems like a pretty balanced approach for me. And the idea is that the ketogenic diet has been around for a long time. I mean, it was first studied in the 1800s. And at the turn of the century, not this century, but the last one, there was a guy named William Banting who was trying to get everyone to follow it because he talked about it correcting corpulence. And for people who aren't familiar with the old-timey speak, that's fatness. So gotcha. he tried to sell the ketogenic diet for fat loss in like 1898.
Right.
So this thing has been around forever. And people are like, no, but there's new research. Yeah, of course, but there was research in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And people who've been in this field long enough remember when it came out popularly for bodybuilding with Dan Duchaine, with Lyle McDonald. And then it came out in popular press with Dr. Atkins. And now we're back again, right? So none of this stuff is new, guys. And that chafes me a little bit when people are like, this new diet's amazing. I'm like, oh my God, it's been around for like 130 years or something. So what I'll say is that I love the excitement and enthusiasm for new ideas in health and fitness. We just have to be careful not to ascribe truth equals new. Mm-hmm. So I believe that people ought to be eating more fat than we were taught in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Mm-hmm. I believe that they should be eating less carbs than we were taught in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Is that a ketogenic diet? No, that's the most extreme taking of that position. What I think, and it's super unpopular, is a balanced intake. Now, at PN, we look at people's natural body type and their hormonal profile and even their genetic profile with our elite athletes. And for some of them, we change the amounts a little bit. Some people we give more carbs and less fat, and other people we give more fat and less carbs. So I feel like there's some relevant individual differences here. But The fact of the matter is, I think most people who are active, and we'll call that like training hard 3+ days a week, do better with a mix, a mixed diet that is moderate carb, moderate fat, moderate protein.
But John, you can't really sell as many balance t-shirts as you can these extreme approaches, can you?
I know, and that's true. And that's what's so hard
Right.
about getting this message out. It also means you can't get as much attention unless you make noise about a more extreme position.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you see people making so much noise. The researchers aren't making this noise. It's the people who are reading the research and posting it in articles on the internet.
Right.
And then it's the people who receive that information downstream, don't have any science or biochemistry background or nutritional biochemistry, then in further interpreting it, and you get what's the equivalent of that kids game, like whisper down the lane. You know what I mean? Where the first person whispers something to the second, and by the time it goes 10 kids deep, it's a totally different message.
Yep.
That's what's kind of happening. So, I mean, in the end, how do you navigate the two? High fat, high carb. The truth of the matter is, if you are engaging in high level, high intensity athletic events, performance, training, you need some carbs. Mm-hmm. You will not last if you don't get them at some point. Okay? Do you need a lot of them? No. The carbs should match your activity levels. Mm-hmm. If you train a lot, you're going to need more. If you train less or a little, you're not going to need that much. It doesn't mean none though, and so that's where we really go. We look at body type and activity level, and then we try and titrate the amounts based on that. And I believe that people can have health and longevity, which is the crux of your first question, under a whole different set of dietary conditions. And all you have to do is look at the blue zones across the world. For anyone who's unfamiliar with the blue zones concept, there were a couple of guys who went out and they wanted to research the most long-lived peoples on the planet. They identified a host of communities all around the world, and they looked at their lifestyle, and they looked at their habits, and they looked at their genetic background and stuff like that. And they tried to identify what were the factors. Now, it's impossible to identify what are the factors because this is not an experimental study, right? It's just descriptive. But what they found was that these people are eating different kinds of diets, and some of them eat lots of fat and others eat little fat. And the macronutrient blend doesn't seem to be where longevity and health hinges when it comes to diet and lifestyle for the most long-lived people on the earth. So I don't think we can say this fat carb debate is where we should be focusing our energy.
That is fascinating. And that's such a breath of fresh air because I think so many people, myself included, are, kind of in this, or I've felt in this tough spot. I want to perform well. I want to look great. But what's most important to me is that I live a long and very, very healthy life. And so to hear you say that you can have it all is a huge breath of fresh air. So I have a question. You emphasized, habit formation and the like earlier, mm-hmm. and we're talking about a lot of different kinds of diets. And take the ketogenic diet, for instance. For most people, that's going to be something that takes a significantly more amount of willpower. So when people come to you and they say that they want to do these diets that are more extreme, that are going to take a lot more, they're going to have to be a lot stricter. What do you say to them, and how do you have that conversation with them when you also believe, in creating these habits and consistency and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have two ways of answering this. One is, what would a good coach do? Mm-hmm. And the second is like what I believe. Okay. So I'll answer both. So what I believe first. What I believe is that following more extreme approaches to health and fitness build a particular non-transferable skill. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I recently had lunch with a colleague, okay, a professional colleague, doesn't work in fitness. And he was swearing that his low carb diet and his daily running routine is the secret to being in shape. Like, he didn't want to hear anything to the contrary. And I don't try and argue it, right? Like, what point is there to making him my dietary adversary? Like, I know that I know tons more than him, right? So it's become a pissing contest on who's right. But he was just like making it clear that he was absolutely right. And so I had to ask the hard question. Well, why aren't you actually in shape right now? Because he wasn't. And it became this thing like, well, I just switched jobs. My wife and I just had our second child. The holidays were just here. Became this string of sort of excuses, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, but it's okay. Once I, take the pause button off and I get back into my regimen, I'll be in great shape again. And I had such a hard time after that conversation, because I'm like, there's something that this guy and the rest of the world needs to know that they don't know right now. But I don't have the words to describe it. So literally, I've been like in my journal, I've been writing, I've been puzzling this out, I've been talking to people. How do I describe it? So here's the best description. It may not be the best description that could be come up with, but it's the best one I can come up with right now. It's that when you get in shape in that way, by following a hard diet that really sort of flies against social conventions. Keto might not be hard once you're well practiced at it, but it flies in the face of social conventions. And most people I know are like, keto's great. I don't feel any cravings. I feel mentally alert. I feel in great shape. And they go to one party and they eat all the pizza. You know what I mean? So it's just evidence that it's not as easy as you're saying it is, right? So let's just say it's like a white knuckle pedal to the metal kind of program. I'm going to train every day. I'm going to do keto, right? What that builds is a particular skill. The ability, when life allows it, to get in great shape doing something hard. The problem with that skill is that it doesn't transfer to when life isn't easy. When life gets hard, and it always does. You're going to switch jobs. You're going to move house. You're going to have a kid. You're going to have a parent or a loved one get ill. You're going to get an injury, right? All of these things are life. They are more of your life than those perfect magical moments where you can do all health and fitness all the time, right? And if you only learn how to get in shape doing the hardest possible things, you will never build the skill of being able to be in shape when life happens. And that's part of what we try and teach at PN through our coaching programs. It's how do you get in shape and maintain being in shape in the context of a real human life. The guy I had lunch with didn't know how to do it. So what happened was when he hit pause, everything went undone. And in his mind, he's like, well, I just don't have the willpower to keep it up. But it's not willpower. Someone more cheesy than me would call it skill power, and I'd want to punch them in the face. But it is a set of skills, and they are fundamentally different skills. The skill to get in shape when life is good and you can go balls to the wall is so different from the skill to get in shape when life is happening and distractions are coming up and you need to pay attention to other things and you want to grow your family and your business. And what I'd love for more people to learn is how to get the latter skill set. So that's my answer to your keto question.
That is such a fucking gem of knowledge. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. And now I think I should answer the second part. What do I do as a coach?
Right.
This is what I want people to know. But as a coach, I've learned that you can't convince people of things that they're not ready for. And that if you try, the natural human impulse when you argue for change is to argue against it. It's a fundamental tenet of motivational interviewing, which is something that we use at Precision Nutrition when coaching clients. And all you have to do is think for 2 seconds in your own life. Imagine there's something that you're on the fence about changing, whether it's your hairstyle, whether it's a way that you are with your parents who annoy you at times, whether it's the way you are with your spouse or whatever, a business partner. And you're thinking about changing. And then all of a sudden that person you're thinking about changing the relationship with comes in and starts arguing for why you should change. Your first instinct is to go the exact opposite direction and argue for why it's not that bad, right? A really simple example is, let's say you have a new client and you ask them to do a diet record, and the diet record's like 50-50, but they ate some junk food or processed food or whatever. And you start really focusing on why they ate the junk food. Like, your diet's okay, but here, and here you ate this, and here, and here you ate this. All of a sudden they start trying to justify why. Well, I was really busy that day and I didn't have time to prep my lunch. So what they're doing is further entrenching themselves in the pattern of behavior you want them to change. So you actually made it harder for them to change rather than less hard. So as a coach, no matter what you think is right, it doesn't matter. Because the more you argue for change or your rightness, the more you make your client an adversary, not a partner in the project. So someone comes to me and says they want to do keto and run every day to get in shape. That's the only thing that's ever worked for them. And they want me to coach them through it. You already know how I feel about that. But I'm in a dilemma, aren't I? Because if I try and convince them, I make them my adversary, not my partner in the project. So we have other approaches. And I published an article on this. I called it What to Do About the Dr. Oz Diet, right? It was this idea that when a client comes to you with something you know is absolutely wrong and isn't great for them, how do you help them? And usually I present options. Option 1, let's do this keto thing and run everyday thing. Now, it's not my favorite choice for you. And I can tell you why. And if you want to hear it, ask and I will. There's option 2. I have an approach that I think will work better and it'll last longer for you. It's this. Now, you are a grown-ass adult. You get to choose. I'm not the boss of you. So you get to do your way and I oversee it, although I don't think it's the best. Get to try it this way, which I think is way better. And I've coached 150,000 people, so I think I have some credibility here. The only thing I want to be careful about is if you do it your way, we're going to have to monitor X, Y, and Z very closely because there's some danger associated with it. And I just want to make sure you're not on your own and that if danger comes up, we can navigate around it instead of being surprised by it. Mm-hmm. That's how I coach someone through this.
Wow. That is phenomenal. Let's see. What's a time? So kind of moving away from, technical nutrition and more like personal and business questions.
Sure.
What is an event in the recent past, could be a year, could be 2 years, that in relation to your company that got you really, really excited?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, this is going to be hard to answer, and here I'm going to get cheesy, but I'm really excited every day at PN because I love the work that we're doing. I mean, you can hear it as I talk through some of these things. I'm assuming listeners, you guys can hear. I'm super fired up about what I do. I love it. I mean, we get to change people's lives every day. We get to work with professionals to help them level up their coaching game every day. We launched, and this may be one of my more exciting things. We launched a level 2 certification program for people who've gone through our level 1, which is a year-long sort of internship/mentorship where we work with people every day in the same way I just described to you how we work with clients. Like we give our coaches practices every single day that they can do in their coaching and then report back to us, and we help mentor them through it, how to be a super coach. Mm-hmm. And the feedback I hear from the coaches is that it's life changing. Like not only does it change their coaching, it changes their whole life. And everywhere I go, everyone who's been through it tells me that. And the truth is, I agree with that because I went through it myself. Mm-hmm. And see, it's weird because I helped create the content for it, right? But I go through it too, because I believe there's a difference between knowing something and practicing something.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing something is all frontal cortex, it's all knowledge transfer. Practicing something is what gets to the root and the heart of who you are as a person and what you do. So I actually go through some of the programs that we deliver to clients and coaches because it makes me practice the things I already know. Mm-hmm. So, as in terms of our programs, the feedback I get and the experience of going through our certification at the level 2 level, where we actually intern and mentor people, gets me super excited all the time because it's literally changing people's lives, and it did for me too. So that's one of the big ones that really resonates with me right now.
That's awesome. So, and that's really interesting what you're saying about continuing to practice what you're preaching. When you're going through these programs, are you yourself checking in with a coach?
Yeah. I actually have one of our team members coach me through it.
That's phenomenal.
Yep. And again, like, it's weird because, like, you build a totally new, vulnerable relationship with some of your team members in this way.
Which allows you to lead, allows you to relate to your clients a lot better, I'm sure, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it totally does. When both on the positives, right? Like where you're like, hey man, that one thing was amazing, it really changed me. And on the negatives, where it was hard, or where the technology may be cumbersome, or where we dropped the ball in some way and we can improve it, But I don't enter it as founder and president of Precision Nutrition. I'm just doing a quality assurance check. Mm-hmm. No, I go in wholeheartedly. Like, how can I use this to change my life and practice the stuff that I already know? And this is a business lesson too for people with businesses listening in. I've heard this quote often said. It's that sometimes you get so good at something that you stop doing it. And I've seen that in a lot of businesses, right? You get so good at a certain marketing technique that the company just forgets to do it. And disaster is imminent, I think over the years, a big, exemplar company like Apple, and I'm on their advisory board, so I work very closely with them, has done that. And there's been like famous case studies on various ways that Apple, for example, did something so well that they stopped doing it. Wow. And I think that's true in our strength training. I think it's true in our nutrition. I think it's true in our businesses. I think it's true in our relationships with our spouses and our children. Don't get so good at doing something you forget to do it.
Right. If you could go back now to right when you started Precision Nutrition, what would you either change in the way that you approached it, or what would you do sooner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple things that I've considered over the years for this. I think everything I am today is a function of the things I was good at and I was bad at back then. But I'm not going to give the whole I wouldn't change a thing answer. The one thing that I think is that you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, or no?
I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, well, good. I'm glad you haven't, because I'm sure lots of listeners haven't either. So the Dunning-Kruger is this effect that it has a categorization, but the original studies were like this. So you give a group of people some math questions, and then you have them answer the questions. And then you ask them later how well they did on the math questions. And the people who did the worst, so the people with the lowest math skill, rated their performance much higher than it actually was. And the people who did the best either underrated their performance or rated it accurately. And so they've reproduced this in other types of skill assessments and things like that. And the Dunning-Kruger effect has essentially been taken to mean that people at low levels of skill and competency, or maybe even experience, always overestimate their knowledge and their ability, which gives them these tremendous blind spots. Yep. They think they know stuff. I mean, just look at the political debate. Look at what people are talking about with politics. who have no business to talk about politics because they haven't spent one day doing it. They don't know anything about it, right? And it happens in every area of life, right? The other day, someone read our ketogenic article and said that when I read an article like that, it's obvious to me that the person who wrote it either doesn't know anything about nutritional biochemistry or has an agenda. And I was like, this is the perfect Dunning-Kruger effect moment. You don't know enough to know that there's a third option. And the third option is that the person writing the article has evaluated all the evidence and hasn't found it as compelling as you. Right. You know what I mean? It's not that there's an agenda or that they're stupid. They could be actually smarter and more informed than you, in which case you have a blind spot you don't even know about. And that's what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. So I bring that up because it's something to check yourself on in every area of your life. Where don't I know stuff? Where is my knowledge so preliminary that I could be making grand sweeping assertions, missing huge swatches of data or perspective? And so the Dunning-Kruger effect is something that I championed in my 20s. You know, when I started, I didn't know so much. And I was so right about what I did know. You know what I mean? So I would want to teach this lesson to that guy. Gotcha. I'd want him to realize that. And, you know, the fascinating thing is now I'm in my mid-40s. And the Dunning-Kruger effect has a treacherous way of making its way into my life now. You know, because I'm like, oh, when I was 20, I was so dumb. I didn't know anything. But I'm glad I know so much now. It's the same problem all over again, you know, which is why nowadays I spend time with people in their 60s who are accomplished and successful. And I'm constantly asking them this one question. What didn't I ask about that I should have?
Oh, that's a great question.
That is the blind spot eliminator. You know, like I remember, you know, Alan Cosgrove, who I don't know if you had him on the show yet.
Not yet.
Brilliant dude.
Yep.
You know, I remember him saying he met with someone who's been very successful in the gym business when he was early in his career. And he's like, I spent the whole time asking him, like, which equipment I should buy for my gym, like what kind of squat rack and what kind of whatever. And he's like, I'm killing myself right now because I could have asked him about important things. And all I did was ask about this stupid shit, you know? And the truth of the matter is that might be too harsh. Because that's where Alan was at that time in his career. If he would have asked about more complicated business questions, it might have been irrelevant to him at the stage he was at. Maybe what squat rack to get was the right question at the time, but maybe it wasn't. And he would have never known if he didn't ask, all right, well, what kind of questions should I be asking you right now? What didn't I ask that I should have? And so this is a thing that I've tried to take away from my Dunning-Kruger mistakes of my 20s. You know, now when I talk to people, if I say, what are my blind spots, it doesn't help them. But if I say, you know, I asked you a lot of questions today, I'm not sure they were all the right ones. What kind of stuff should I be thinking about? Because what's around the next turn that I don't know is coming? And I try and get people to help me with that, because that is where I'm going to be, not where I am.
God damn, that's good. I love that. What is one thing that most people don't know about you that you wish they did?
Oh, geez. I don't, is there anything like I put everything, I'm like pretty transparent guy. I put everything on Facebook. In our coaching lessons, I talk about the counseling that I get, to relationship counseling and parenting counseling. Yeah, man, I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty open book about stuff. You know, I mean, I have a pretty full life. The three things that I do are my work at Precision Nutrition, my family. I'm married to Amanda and we have 4 children. And that takes up some of my time, and my fitness and my athletics. I compete in track and field at the master's level, and I like to lift heavy things. And there's nothing else I have in my life because those are my 3 priorities. And I often tell people this is how I do what I do. I've identified the 3 things that matter to me, and everything else is a polite no thank you. You want to come to this event, you want to do this other thing, you want to take up this hobby, no thank you, because I only have time for the 3 things that matter to me. So there's probably nothing that's a secret, really.
No, that was a great answer. And that's a little, I don't know, paradigm that I wasn't expecting. I like that a lot. What is a 1 or 2 daily habits or activities that you do that you think most contributes to your success?
I was on Jason Ferrugia's podcast recently, and this is not a good answer, by the way. But he recently dragged out of me that I have this whole like facial skincare routine that I do every morning.
Nice.
And he made me detail it, so I won't put, all you folks listening.
We'll link to that in the show notes, guys.
That's right. Yeah, I won't make you guys listening to it go through my sprays and my scrubs and things like that, my morning mask.
I wasn't going to say anything because we don't know each other like that yet, but you have phenomenal hair.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Someone actually gave me a compliment on my hair the other day too, which is awesome. And I'm so rubbing it in my wife's face because she keeps telling me I have to go for a haircut. And I'm like, I love how my hair looks right now.
Nice.
And in 3 days, 2 people have told me that I have great hair. So eat that, baby. It's good for a relationship to say things like that to your wife. Things that I think actually contribute to my success meaningfully, although I think the skincare routine is an important one, is number 1 is that I review at the beginning of each day what I'm supposed to be doing for that day. Now this change happened in my career. That's weird. Early in your career, you don't have any opportunities. So every single time someone asks you if you want to do something, you're like, yeah. You don't even ask if there's pay. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'll do it. Then eventually you get to a place. This business lesson parallels dating as well, if you think about it. But then eventually you get to a place where you're like, oh man, I'm actually getting some opportunities, and you start to filter through them and decide which ones are most valuable. Well, I've recently got to another place in my career, which I never expected. This was Dunning-Kruger problems, right? I didn't see it was coming. If I evaluated every opportunity that came in right now, I would spend 50 hours a week evaluating opportunities and doing none of them.
Right.
So what I do now is I have little notes posted around my office that remind me of my priorities, my family, my PN work, and my health and fitness. So I don't forget, because it's easy. Are these
post-it notes?
Yeah. I have a double computer screen monitor set up, and I just have little notes around them, with little things I want to remember. So one of them is that. These are my 3 priorities. Don't forget them, dummy, because I will forget them sometimes, right? And then the second thing is I have like reminders of what I'm trying to do in a current phase of our business, like what our key priorities are. What are the top 3 things within each of those?
Got it.
Right? Because saying family is a priority is nice, but what does that mean? Does that mean spending time with all 6 of us, or one-on-one time, or time in the car, or doing activity? So I want to identify what that means. And in work, it's the same. And I find that if I don't just get a refresher each day on what I'm supposed to be doing, what's the biggest thing that makes the most difference today, I will spend all my time doing stupid shit that makes no difference.
Right.
And like I'll give you a family example. Now that we have 4 children, the time that I spend one-on-one with each child is rare, but I find it the most impactful. Right? I don't have to be pouring tons and tons of hours into family if I just have some critical hours spent one-on-one with each person. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can spend less total family time as long as the time is really super high quality, right? Because they don't actually feel that I'm having awesome time with dad if it's just worthless time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And the same thing happens at work. Right? I can work 60 hours a week and do nothing of importance that no one feels, respects, cares about, or I can spend 30 hours doing all meaningful things where everyone's like, man, that was amazing, made a difference, moved the needle. The only way to do the latter is to identify what the important things are and remind yourself to constantly do them while the treadmill of life keeps plugging along and tries to make you feel like you have to keep up. Oh, there's an email. Oh, there's a text. Oh, someone just slacked me. All this, all that. There's an emergency. If I want to be effective and if I want to live a life I'm proud of, I can't be responding to those. I have to be centered on what's important. And that's what I do. And it's a practice and it's not always easy. And I don't always get it right. But if I don't try, there's a very predictable outcome.
God, what a great answer. Okay. So how do you stay disciplined to that? Do you schedule out your day in different chunks? And how do you, I don't know, keep out some of that noise, the emails, the text? Do you create rules for yourself? Anything of that nature?
Well, I have a pretty set work schedule, although I work remotely, and that the idea is you can work whenever, from wherever, a coffee shop. No, I don't do that. I sit at my desk in my home office for set hours each day. And those hours are like 9:30 to 3. And so I need things visible or else I forget about them. So put notes around my office. And I use a notepad, like an old school pen and lined paper notepad. And I write on it each day, like what I'm supposed to be doing that day. It takes like just 2 minutes in the morning, What's my top priority? Okay, what can I do to move that forward today? And then my wife and I worked out this deal. She takes the kids to school in the morning and then I pick them up in the afternoon. So at 3 o'clock, I have to go. Right? There's no more, just one more email. There's no, or else my kids will be sitting on the playground, sad faces, while daddy didn't come get them. And that for me is like a really cool transition routine as well, right? It helps me transition from my work day to my family time. And then, once they go to bed, that's my trigger to go work out. So I help get their teeth brushed and pajamas on, and that's 8 o'clock. And then I have a really nice home gym that we built. And then once they're in bed, I sneak out to the gym, and that's when I get my time to train. So I have these really clear demarcation points in my day, right? Where it's not loose and flexible. Now, if something happens, I make it flexible, but I try and make sure I have transitions, a transition from work to family, a transition from family to self-care. And that's just how I do it.
Absolutely love it. Okay, man. My last question is there, and take this however you want. It could be about nutrition, life in general, coaching, whatever. But is there anything that I should have asked that I didn't?
Yeah, it's a good one. My favorite question. Always hate when it's turned back on me, though. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering, I bucket things. So I'm like, oh, what might the listeners want to know? And my favorite thing for listeners is actually a question about how I manage training, because I still train hard and compete, eating, family, business. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that's relevant to everyone listening because maybe they don't have their own business or whatever. But I suspect everyone's trying to manage serious training. To a
different degree, yes.
And aging, right? Like, I'm in my 40s now, and I show up at track meets.
Right.
Kind of weird. You know what I mean? But I like it. And so that's the one. That's the one I always love answering because I actually thought a lot about this,
I love it, man. This has been so good. People are going to get so much value out of this. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with?
No, I mean, I don't really have anything to promote or sell. If you guys like what you heard today, I post about this kind of stuff often on my Dr. John Berardi Facebook page. So if you want to come check it out, some good discussions over there. And then, yeah, I mean, everything we do professionally, from coaching clients to working with professionals, is over at precisionnutrition.com. So I'd love people, if they got some value out of this, I think they get a lot of value out of the other stuff we do. We put free articles up on our site all the time. There's
so many,
over 1,000, I think now.
Yeah.
Free articles for people to read. And so, yeah, that's really it. Come check us out, and check me out on Facebook.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for your time, John. This has been phenomenal.
No worries, Mike. And everyone listening, thank you too for listening. You've made it over the hour mark now.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the time we've spent together today, and I hope you got some value out of it.
Thank you, man.